Imagine a world long before our own, a time when the earth was wild and untamed. On the vast, sun-drenched plains of Africa, two ancient species are about to cross paths. One, a clever toolmaker, taking its first upright steps towards destiny. The other, a colossal bird, a true giant of the Pliocene era. This is not just a chance meeting. It's a moment that will echo through millennia. We travel back 3.2 million years to the East African Rift Valley. This is the cradle of humanity, a world teeming with life. Vast grassy savannas stretch to the horizon, dotted with acacia trees and scattered forests. Herds of megafauna roam freely, ancestral elephants, saber-toothed cats, and giants we can now only dream of. The air is thick with the calls of strange beasts and the scent of dry earth. Here, we meet one of the most magnificent creatures of its time, a giant ostrich, perhaps a relative of Asterisk, Struthiooldawayensis asterisk. Standing up to 3 meters tall and weighing over 400 kilograms, this bird was a true titan. It was flightless, but what it lacked in aerial ability, it made up for with incredible speed and legs powerful enough to deliver a fatal kick. These giants were primarily grazers, but like many animals, wouldn't pass up an opportunity to scavenge. They built their nests on the open plains, fiercely guarding their precious eggs from any and all threats. Their primary predators were the formidable saber-toothed cats and giant hyenas that prowled the landscape. And then, another key player enters our story, Asterisk Homo habilis asterisk. Appearing around 2.8 million years ago, this was one of the first true members of our own genus, Asterisk Homo asterisk, known as the handyman, Asterisk Homo habilis asterisk, was a revolutionary species, the first to systematically create and use stone tools. These early humans were smaller than us, living in small, cooperative groups. Their diet was omnivorous, a mix of fruits, roots, and whatever meat they could scavenge from the kills of larger predators. Survival depended on their wits, their tools, and their ability to work together. Now, let's picture the encounter. The sun beats down on the savanna. A small band of Asterisk Homo habilis asterisk moves cautiously through the tall grass. They've spotted a prize, a giant ostrich nest, left momentarily unguarded. The eggs within represent a massive protein-rich meal, a bounty that could feed their group for days. A young Asterisk habilis asterisk, clutching a crudely sharpened stone, creeps forward. "Stay low," watch the mother, a senior member of the group whispers, his eyes scanning the horizon. But they are not alone. The giant ostrich mother, having been foraging nearby, senses the intrusion. With a deep guttural cry, she charges. The ground trembles beneath her thunderous footsteps. The group scatters. The young habilis trips, falling just as the bird closes in. It raises a massive leg, ready to strike. But the leader is quick, throwing a rock that hits the ground near the bird, distracting it for just a second. It's enough. The young hominin scrambles to his feet and retreats with the others to the safety of a rocky outcrop. From a distance, they watch as the mother ostrich circles her nest, her powerful form a clear warning. They have failed to secure the eggs, but they have gained something far more valuable: knowledge. They observe the bird's speed, its defensive tactics, and its territorial nature. This encounter, though ending in retreat, was a critical lesson in risk, observation, and strategy. For early humans, every interaction with the powerful megafauna of their world was a learning experience. They learned when to fight, when to flee, and how to use their growing intelligence to outwit creatures far stronger than themselves. Over hundreds of thousands of years, these lessons would accumulate, honing the skills that would eventually allow humans to not just survive, but to thrive and dominate the planet. The giant ostriches, like so many other megafauna, would eventually vanish, while the small, clever hominins would continue their incredible journey. In the ancient plains of Africa, each encounter, each
Welcome to my
success,
channel.
and each failure shapes
Today we'll
the
take a journey
destiny of
back in time
species. To learn about what caveman did all day. When the sun began to rise, the cavemen would wake up. They didn't use an alarm clock, so the sunrise and the sounds of nature were their alarm. The first thing they would do was rekindle the fire that the tribe had made the night before. Then they would check if there was any food left from the previous day. After this, they would stretch their stiff limbs and yawn widely. After this, the women and the children would go out looking for food. They would gather berries, nuts, and roots to eat. The men, on the other hand, would go hunting small to medium-sized animals. Sometimes they would also fish or set traps for animals. If the men managed to catch enough food, they would share it with the rest of the tribe. If not, then everyone would have to go hungry. After this, the cavemen would start working. They would make and repair stone tools, wooden spears, and baskets for gathering. They would also use the fire to cook their food, keep themselves warm, and protect themselves from wild animals. When they weren't working, they would prepare the hides of the animals they had killed to use them for clothing and shelter. The men usually did the hunting and the making of tools, while the women processed the hides, and the children gathered around the fire and kept it going. However, everybody had to help each other out when needed. As far as shelter goes, if the cavemen lived near a cave, they would live in it. Otherwise, they would build a hut using branches, bones, and hides. These huts were extremely simple and didn't last very long. When the season changed, the cavemen would have to move to a new location in search of food and water. This is why cavemen migrated all the time. Sometimes they would follow the herds of animals they hunted. The social life of the caveman was also interesting. They lived in small groups of 20 to 40 people. These groups consisted of several families who were related, like an extended family band. Everybody in the group had a role to play. The men hunted, the women gathered, the children kept the fire going, and the elders watched over everybody and made sure everybody did their work. The elders were respected because they had lots of memories and knowledge. Even though the cavemen had a social life, this doesn't mean they didn't have problems. They were constantly getting injured, getting infections, and going hungry. Most of them didn't live past the age of 20 to 30, so the average life expectancy was quite low. But there is some evidence that shows that they took care of the sick and the disabled. When they weren't busy doing something, the cavemen liked to have fun. In the evenings, after the sun went down, they would sit around the fire and tell stories. They also used to sing songs and make up myths. Cavemen also used to make cave art, carvings, and probably also early music. They made flutes out of bones and used to play them. They also liked to play games with stones and sticks, and they liked to imitate animals. The family structure of the cavemen was also unique. Cavemen didn't have formal marriage rituals, so pair bonds were formed naturally. Once a man and a woman wanted to be together, they stayed together. The community also played an important role in raising the children, not just the parents. So basically the whole village would raise the children. It was also normal for a man to have more than one wife. The cavemen believed that cooperation was more important than individual choice. This is why they always put the good of the group before their own needs. The seasons also played an important role in the life of the cavemen. Summer was the best season as it meant abundance, so survival was easier. Winter was the worst season as food was scarce, and the cavemen had to huddle together for warmth. During winter, the cavemen would often migrate to warmer places where they could find food easily. This is why most cave paintings and carvings have been found in warmer places. At night, the cavemen would gather by the fire one last time before going to sleep. They would tell stories, sing songs, and make myths. The children would listen intently to the stories, and the adults would reminisce about the old times. They would sleep in groups, and the adults would huddle together for warmth. The children would sleep in the middle of the group, as this was the safest place. And that's all. What if everything we know about our own origins is wrong? For centuries, ancient Sumerian tablets, some of the oldest writings in existence, have kept their secrets locked away in cuneiform script. But recently, an advanced AI system was tasked with deciphering newly discovered fragments. And what it found has sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The translations hint at a terrifying truth about the human race that we were never meant to know. Let's rewind for a moment. Who were the Sumerians? Living over 6,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, they were the world's first true civilization. They gave us writing, the wheel, law, cities, and even complex astronomy. Their records are our earliest window into human history. But what if those records contain more than just history? What if they hold the key to our very creation? This is where the AI's translation gets strange. Traditional scholars have long interpreted Sumerian myths as just that, myths. Stories of gods and goddesses, creation epics, and great floods. But the AI, capable of detecting linguistic patterns and nuances that human experts might miss, began piecing together a different narrative. It found consistent references to multiple races of beings, some described as celestial, others as engineered. The texts repeatedly mention humanity being created to serve powerful gods, known as the Anunnaki. But were these gods really divine, or were they something else entirely? This raises a fascinating question. Can we trust an AI to interpret ancient spirituality? Human translators bring cultural context and intuition, but they also bring bias. An AI, on the other hand, is purely logical. It connects dots without preconceived notions. So when the AI flagged passages that seem to describe genetic manipulation and creation, experiments, experts were forced to look again. Could phrases once translated as divine breath or clay molding to actually be ancient descriptions of a sophisticated biological process? This is what the AI suggests is the terrifying knowledge. The texts describe catastrophic events and the creation of different types of humans, each designed for a specific purpose. It's a narrative that sounds eerily similar to modern genetic engineering. The tablets speak of failed experiments and perfected models, as if our ancestors were recording a scientific logbook. It's not a religious myth. The idea that humanity might have been engineered by a more advanced civilization is a staple of science fiction. But what if the Sumerians were trying to tell us it was science fact? Think about the parallels to our world today. We're mapping the human genome, experimenting with CRISPR gene editing, and developing conscious AI. Are we simply rediscovering knowledge that was known thousands of years ago? Are we repeating a cycle of creation and technological advancement that our distant ancestors witnessed firsthand? The Sumerian texts, through the lens of AI, suggest that we might not be the first civilization on this planet to reach this level of technological prowess. So, we're left with a profound mystery. Were the Sumerians simply gifted storytellers? Their myths a way of explaining a world they couldn't understand? Or were they meticulous historians, recording a past so fantastic that we dismissed it as fantasy? The AI's translation doesn't give us the final answer. Instead, it opens a door to possibilities that are both exciting and deeply unsettling. It forces us to ask whether the AI is uncovering a lost truth about our creators, or if it's simply weaving a new myth for the digital age. But perhaps the most chilling question the texts leave us with is this: if we were created to serve, what happens now that we've started creating intelligences of our own? Welcome to life 5.6 years ago. Where are you? 50,000 to 60,000 years ago, the world looked very different than it does today. Most of the world was buried under an ice sheet. The sea level was more than 100 meters lower than today, which exposed vast stretches of land that are now underwater. This included the shallow shelf of the Sunda and Sahul seas between mainland Asia and the islands of Southeast Asia and Australia, which connected India to Indonesia and Australia. That's why we call this region the Asia-Pacific today. Why did early humans need to leave Africa? Humans appeared in Africa around 300,000 years ago and thrived there for hundreds of thousands of years. But starting around 70,000 years ago, the Earth began to warm again after the last ice age. As the ice melted, the rising water swallowed up the coastal homelands of many humans. Maybe they also felt the urge to explore the world, to follow herds of migrating animals. Or perhaps they were simply curious about what lay beyond the horizon. Whatever the reason, people began to move out of Africa and into the Asia-Pacific region. We know that early humans migrated into Asia via two main routes. The first was from Africa to Arabia and then into South Asia, and the second route led them across into Southeast Asia and eventually to Australia. To make this leap, they had to build some kind of raft or boat. While there is no archaeological evidence of boats or rafts this old still existing, anthropologists have found evidence that points to their use. For example, stone tools found at various sites indicate that early humans had the capability to cut and shape wood, suggesting that they had the skills necessary to construct such vessels. In addition, studies have shown that the people who lived in South Africa between 70,000 and 80,000 years ago used the same type of stone tools that are associated with the later boat-building cultures, indicating a continuity of tradition that may have played a role in their maritime activities. It's believed that early humans used large logs of wood as the base for their rafts, which they would then attach together to form a larger vessel. These logs were then hollowed out using a combination of fire and stone tools to create space for people to sit and store supplies. Some researchers believe that the early humans may have used a type of dugout canoe made from a single piece of wood that had been hollowed out using a fire saw technique. This would have required a team of people to drag the log to the shore and then set it afloat. The journey across open water would have been both dangerous and uncertain. Storms could capsize their rafts or smash them against rocks. Hunger and thirst would have been constant companions, and there would be no respite from the sun's scorching rays. And there were also other dangers lurking in the waters around them. Early humans would have encountered sharks and other large sea creatures that would have been attracted to the scent of human blood and sweat. To defend themselves, they may have used spears to keep predators away. And if any got too close, they probably had no choice but to fight back with their bare hands and teeth. Yet despite all these challenges, early humans pressed on, driven by the need to survive and the desire to explore the unknown. They sailed into the vast ocean, guided only by the stars in the night sky, the rhythm of the waves and the direction of the wind. With no maps or compasses to guide them, they developed a keen sense of awareness of their surroundings, learning to read the subtle signs of the sea and the sky. The journey across the ocean would have taken weeks, maybe even months, and the mental toll on those brave enough to attempt it would have been immense. Fear and doubt would have crept in, whispering tales of danger and despair. But the early humans pushed on, their determination fueled by the hope of a better life on the other side of the horizon. As the first glimpses of land appeared on the horizon, their spirits would have soared, knowing that their ordeal was almost over. When they finally reached the shore, they would have collapsed in exhaustion, their bodies battered by the elements, but their spirits unbroken, for they had survived the perilous journey across the sea and emerged victorious on the other side. So let's get to know our family a bit. We'll call them the Tele, meaning travelers in a fictional language. The Tele are a group of early humans who lived on the shores of South Africa 70,000 years ago. Their days were spent searching for food, and their nights were filled with storytelling around the campfire. The Tele had a deep connection to the ocean, and many of their myths and legends were about the sea and its creatures. They believed that the ocean was full of both beauty and danger, and they respected it accordingly. One evening, while the Tele were gathered around the campfire, an elder spoke up, had a wild idea, an idea that would change the course of history. He suggested that his people should build a raft and sail across the ocean to see what lay beyond the horizon. The idea was met with a mix of excitement and fear. Many of the tribe members were skeptical, but the elder's passion was contagious, and soon they were all discussing the logistics of such an adventure. After much preparation, the time finally came for the tribe to embark on their journey across the sea. With their belongings loaded onto the raft and their hopes for a better future guiding them, the tall trees set sail into the vast unknown. As the raft moved further and further away from the familiar coastline, the ocean began to feel less like a source of sustenance and more like a dangerous and unpredictable force of nature. Storms tossed the raft like a toy in a bathtub, and the sea swelled and roared with a terrifying intensity. But the Tele were not daunted. They worked together to keep the raft on course, bailing out water, adjusting the sails, and tending to any injuries that cropped up. The scarcity of food and water was a constant challenge, but the tribe rationed their supplies carefully and never lost hope. Through it all, the tall trees drew strength from each other, their bonds of community and trust growing stronger with each passing day. They sang songs to keep their spirits high, telling stories to pass the time, and sharing their fears and dreams under the starlit sky. When they finally sighted land, their joy knew no bounds. After weeks at sea, the sight of solid ground was a welcome relief. As they stepped off the raft and onto the shore, they were greeted by a lush, unfamiliar landscape. Tall trees swayed in the gentle breeze, exotic flowers dotted the terrain, and the air was filled with the sounds of unseen birds. It was a paradise, but one that was also full of unfamiliar dangers. There were new plants and animals, some of which were dangerous to humans. There were also new diseases that the tall trees had no immunity against, yet the tribe pressed on, driven by their desire to explore and their refusal to be deterred by obstacles. They learned to adapt to their new environment, discovering new food sources and developing new ways of doing things. They made friends with some of the native peoples, trading goods, and learning about the customs and traditions of the local cultures. They also encountered other human species, such as the Neanderthals and Denisovans, and either befriended them or fought against them for survival. Over time, the tall trees became part of the rich tapestry of human history, their legacy living on through the genes they passed down to future generations. It's easy to forget that we humans are actually explorers at heart. Our ancestors were driven by an insatiable curiosity and wanderlust that led them to brave the unknown and push the boundaries of what was possible. They explored uncharted territories, discovered new lands, and forged new cultures, all in the pursuit of a better life, or simply because they could unresist the call of the open road or sea. Just like our ancestors, we're all explorers in our own way, always searching for new horizons to conquer, new challenges to overcome, and new experiences to embrace. Whether we're traveling across the globe or just venturing outside our comfort zone, we carrying on the legacy of our explorer ancestors and imagine a world where every sunrise is a battle for survival. Fierce predators roam a landscape rocked by ice ages and brutal droughts. This was the reality for our ancestors a million years ago. So how did a creature, not the strongest or fastest, manage to not just survive, but eventually thrive when nature itself seemed against them? A million years ago, during the early Pleistocene epoch, Earth was a very different place. It was a world of giants. Imagine walking alongside mammoths, giant elephants, and facing down saber-toothed cats. The climate was unpredictable, with massive glaciers advancing and retreating, turning lush forests into frozen tundras and back again. Our ancestors weren't just living in this world, they were evolving with it, talking about species like asterisk, Homo habilis, asterisk, the handyman, and the more advanced asterisk, Homo erectus asterisk. Physically, they were smaller than us, but their brains were growing. This mental evolution was their secret weapon. They began to understand their environment, to observe patterns, and most importantly, to innovate. And what was their first game-changing innovation? Stone tools? It might sound simple, but a sharpened piece of rock changed everything. It transformed a soft hand into a powerful weapon and a precise instrument. With tools, they could butcher large animals scavenged from other predators, crush bones for nutritious marrow, and defend themselves. This was the dawn of technology, the first step on the path to mastering their world. But an even greater power was about to be harnessed: fire. Picture a small group huddled around a crackling flame on a cold, dark night. Fire provided warmth against the freezing cold of the Ice Age. It cooked food, making it easier to digest and unlocking vital nutrients. It kept terrifying nocturnal predators at bay. But more than that, the campfire became the first living room. It was a place for social bonding, for sharing stories through grunts and gestures, the very beginning of language and culture. Our ancestors quickly learned they couldn't survive alone. They were social creatures. Teamwork was their superpower. They learned to cooperate on hunts, bringing down animals much larger than themselves. They shared food, ensuring the whole group was fed, not just the strongest. This community living, this reliance on each other, built the foundation for human society. They communicated, likely through a combination of simple sounds and gestures, coordinating their actions and strengthening their social bonds. Their diet was a mix of whatever they could get. They were expert scavengers, following predators to steal parts of a kill. They were also becoming skilled hunters, using their growing intelligence and cooperative strategies. They learned which plants were edible and which were poisonous, gathering roots, berries, and nuts. And when resources ran dry, they did what humans have always done. They moved. They migrated across vast distances, constantly searching for food, water, and safer lands. This life was a brutal filter. Countless individuals and even entire groups likely perished. Archaeologists have just unearthed a 12,000-year-old human statue older than any civilization we've ever known. Buried for millennia beneath the sands of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, this eerie, lifelike figure has just been brought into the light. It stares back at us from across an unimaginable gulf of time. The immediate burning question is, who carved it and why? To understand the weight of this discovery, we first need to understand Göbekli Tepe itself. This isn't just another ancient ruin. It's the world's oldest known temple. It's built around 9600 BCE. That's thousands of years before Stonehenge, before the Great Pyramids of Giza. Imagine a time when humans were supposedly simple hunter-gatherers, living hand to mouth. Yet these people gathered to build something monumental. They erected massive T-shaped megalithic pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, and carved them with intricate depictions of animals, like lions, foxes, and vultures. These pillars are arranged in mysterious circular enclosures, the purpose of which still baffles experts. This was a sophisticated, organized effort all before the invention of agriculture, pottery, or writing. And now, among these ancient stones, this new statue has emerged. Standing nearly 2.5 meters tall, it's carved from limestone with astonishing realism. Unlike the stylized animal carvings, this figure is distinctly human. It depicts a male, with stark accentuated ribs and a prominent phallus. But most striking is its solemn, powerful expression. The craftsmanship is incredible for its age, challenging everything we thought we knew about the artistic capabilities of our Stone Age ancestors. The fact that it survived for 12,000 years in such remarkable condition is a miracle in itself. So what does it mean? Who does this statue represent? Was it a god they worshipped? A revered ancestor watching over their sacred rituals? Or maybe a guardian figure protecting this holy site? The statue was found clutching its abdomen, a gesture seen in other figures from this era, which could symbolize life, fertility, or even death and rebirth. Some researchers are looking for connections between the symbols at Göbekli Tepe and the mythologies of later civilizations, like the Sumerians or the Egyptians. Could this be the very root of our oldest stories? The dating process is what makes this so concrete. Scientists used radiocarbon dating on organic materials found in the same archaeological layer, along with sediment analysis, to confirm the statue's mind-boggling age. It's definitively from the pre-pottery Neolithic period. Around 10,000 BCE, the archaeologists on site were stunned. A human representation of this scale and artistry from that time was thought to be impossible. This single artifact forces us to reconsider the dawn of civilization. We've long been taught that complex society, religion, and art followed the invention of agriculture. But Göbekli Tepe suggests it was the other way around. The need to gather for religious or ceremonial purposes may have been the catalyst that pushed humans to settle down and develop farming. Were ancient humans far more advanced spiritually and artistically than we ever imagined? Göbekli Tepe wasn't just a building. It may have been the world's first true cultural and religious center. Naturally, I find this profound invites speculation. While mainstream science is focused on reevaluating the Neolithic period, some researchers are pushing the boundaries further. They question if Göbekli Tepe and its creators are evidence of a lost, forgotten civilization, a culture that rose and fell long before recorded history. Could this be a thread leading back to the stories Plato told of Atlantis? A highly advanced society erased by a global cataclysm? The statue's intense gaze seems to hold a secret, a story from a world we can barely comprehend. Its pose could be a key to understanding their cosmology or creation myths. As we look at the image of this statue, we're looking into the face of our deepest past. 12,000 years ago, before cities, before writing, before the world as we know it began, someone carved a face into stone. They left a message, a presence, that has now outlasted their entire world. Imagine for a moment that there was an empire so big, so advanced, and so powerful that it changed the course of human history. But then something happened. All records of its existence were lost, its people vanished, and its monumental achievements were intentionally destroyed or simply forgotten. Then one day, some very smart people started putting the pieces together, uncovered old maps, discovered unexplained structures, and pieced together stories from people who claimed to have witnessed the incredible legacy of this long-lost empire firsthand. And today, those clues are leading us to ask one burning question. What if Tartaria was the greatest empire in history that was erased on purpose? Hi everyone. Today we're going to explore the strange world of Tartaria, a hidden past that some believe could rewrite everything we know about human history. Let's get into it. First things first, what exactly is Tartaria? Well, as far as alternative history goes, the exact nature of Tartaria is a bit vague. Some say it was a single, tightly knit empire that spanned the globe. Others see it as more of a nickname given to the wider region of Eurasia during a particular period of time. Either way, most Tartarian believers agree on a few key points. First, it was an extremely vast, powerful, and wealthy place. Second, its culture, architecture, and technology were incredibly advanced for its time. Third, it was home to a highly sophisticated society that prized knowledge and exploration above all else. Fourth, there was a mysterious event that caused the sudden collapse of Tartarian civilization. And fifth, the true history of Tartaria has been deliberately covered up by those in power ever since. It might sound a bit bonkers at first, but let us take a closer look at where these ideas come from and what they might mean for our understanding of the past. If you've done any research on the topic, you may have seen this image floating around, which claims to show Tartaria at the peak of its power. Now, if you're a geography nerd like me, you'll notice that this map doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. In fact, if you zoom in, it looks a heck of a lot like Russia and China. Which begs the question, did Tartaria really exist? The first is to pretend that it did and explore what that would mean for world history. So let's play along for a second and just assume that this map is real. This is a pre-Mongol world map, and it's showing Tartaria right here. Look how massive it is. It goes through Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, Siberia, Mongolia, China, Japan. Okay, so first off, let's talk about the size of this thing. We're talking about a landmass that's roughly equivalent to modern-day Europe and Russia combined. We're talking about a global empire that literally spanned the known world. But it gets even crazier. The Tartarian believers claim that this empire wasn't just huge, it was also incredibly grand. The buildings were magnificent, the cities were sprawling, and the culture was rich and sophisticated. Many Tartarians claim that Tartaria was home to towering skyscrapers, massive stone hinges, gigantic statues, and other wonders of engineering and art that we can barely fathom today. There are even rumors of free energy technology and other inventions that were centuries ahead of their time. And let's not forget about the people who lived there. According to some accounts, Tartaria was home to a race of giant humans who were incredibly strong and intelligent. They were said to be masters of construction, science, and philosophy, and they left behind a legacy of wisdom and enlightenment that has been lost to time. But wait, there's more. If you thought the Mongol Empire was the biggest land-based empire in history, think again, because according to Tartarian lore, Tartaria was even bigger. Tartaria stretched all the way from Eastern Europe to the Pacific Ocean. And to put that into perspective, the largest empire in history, the British Empire, only covered around 35 million square kilometers. In addition to its size and grandeur, Tartarian believers also claim that this empire had a profound impact on world history. Tartaria was said to be a melting pot of different cultures and religions, and it played a vital role in the spread of ideas and innovations across the Eurasian continent. Tartarian merchants and explorers were among the first to reach the Americas, Australia, and other distant lands. And Tartarian art, literature, and philosophy had a profound influence on the development of world civilization. So if Tartaria really existed, it would have been one of the most significant empires in human history. Its size, wealth, and cultural achievements would have dwarfed those of its contemporaries. But sadly, most people have never heard of it because its story was allegedly erased from the historical record. Okay, so now that we've established what Tartaria was and how awesome it was, let's move on to the next question. Why was it erased? Well, according to the believers, there are two possible explanations. The second explanation is that the Tartarian civilization mysteriously collapsed and its history was rewritten to hide the truth about its demise. Most of the world knows very little about Tartaria today. That's a shame because its legacy could have been truly remarkable. So if Tartaria really existed, how would it have changed history? Well, that's a tough question to answer because we don't know much about the empire to begin with. For starters, a powerful Tartarian empire would have completely changed the balance of power in the world. Instead of Europe dominating the globe, it would have been Eurasia and the Americas. We might have seen very different conflicts and alliances between different nations and regions. Plus, Tartaria was supposedly centuries ahead of its time in terms of technology. If that's true, then the world would have looked very different under their rule. Imagine having access to free energy, advanced medicine, flying machines, and other inventions that we only dream of today. It's hard to say how such advanced technology would have impacted the rest of the world, but it's safe to say that it would have been pretty significant. Religion, culture, and trade would have also been affected by a powerful Tartarian empire. As a melting pot of different cultures, Tartaria would have facilitated the exchange of ideas and goods between different parts of the world. And with its advanced knowledge and wisdom, Tartaria would have become a center of learning and enlightenment, attracting scholars and thinkers from all over the globe. Overall, a powerful Tartarian empire would have created a very different world than the one we live in today. It would have been a world shaped by advanced technology, cultural diversity, and the pursuit of knowledge. But thankfully, we do and need to wonder what this world would have looked like, because it's all around us. You just have to know where to look. Now, before you go running around the globe looking for remnants of this lost empire, I should probably mention that mainstream historians don't buy it. The idea of Tartaria being a lost empire is considered a conspiracy theory because it contradicts everything we know about history. Most historians agree that Tartaria was never an empire at all, just a geographic term used to describe the vast Eurasian steppes. There's also no evidence of giant humans, free energy technology, or other advanced technology. And finally, there's no proof that Tartaria was deliberately erased from history. For one, many Tartarian believers feel that mainstream history is Eurocentric and biased against non-Western cultures. They argue that the Tartarian Empire was deliberately ignored and marginalized by Western historians who wanted to downplay the contributions of Asian and Slavic people. Additionally, there's also the allure of the unknown and the desire to uncover hidden truths. The idea that there is a secret past that has been deliberately concealed is incredibly intriguing, and it appeals to people's sense of adventure and curiosity. Finally, some people just and accept the idea that a technologically advanced civilization could have been wiped out so easily. They believe that there are still traces of Tartaria all around us, and that all we have to do is open our eyes to see it. Okay, so here's the thing. Whether or not Tartaria truly existed as a lost empire, there's no denying that the story itself is incredibly fascinating. It reveals our innate human desire to explore the unknown and seek out lost civilizations. It also shows how much of our history is still shrouded in mystery and how much we do and know about the world around us. Maybe Tartaria did exist, or maybe it didn't. But either way, the story serves as a reminder that there's always more to discover and that our understanding of the past is constantly evolving. Before the pyramids of Egypt, before Rome or Greece, there was a forgotten people who built the very first civilization in human history. They were the Sumerians. But who were they? And why does their story still matter today? Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're going back to Mesopotamia, which means land between two rivers in ancient Iraq, where we find the cradle of human civilization. It is here that around 4,500 years ago, in a region known as Sumer, the Sumerians settled and began developing the first ever city. And as such, they are often referred to as the cradle of civilization. But who exactly were the Sumerians? Over the next few thousand years, the Sumerians flourished. They became the dominant power in Mesopotamia until around 2000 BC, when they were conquered by the Akkadians. Nevertheless, their influence would live on through the empires that came after them, such as the Babylonian Empire and the Assyrian Empire. Eventually, the Babylonian Empire would adopt the Sumerian cuneiform writing system and turn it into their own, further spreading the influence of Sumeria. So to answer this question, let's dive right in. So who were the Sumerians? The Sumerians were one of the earliest known civilizations of the ancient Near East, living along the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in southern Mesopotamia. Sumer, the region, was a fertile area full of mud, flat-topped hills, expansive plains, and seasonal marshes. It also had plenty of water from the nearby rivers, making it easy to grow crops and sustain large populations. Despite being located in what is now considered a desert, the Sumerians were able to flourish because they developed irrigation systems to water plants. Well, this is because the Sumerians created the world's first known cities. At their peak, the Sumerians had three main cities: Uruk and Eridu. These three cities may have been the very first true cities in human history. Around 2600 BC, Sumerian city-states encompassed several communities and institutions, including those focused on religion, administration, and the economy. Cities like Lagash, Kish, Adab, and others had their own governments, economies, and military forces. This shows that the Sumerians understood the concept of organized governance resource management, and social structure elements that defined civilization. They also built monumental architecture, showcasing their advanced engineering skills. Ziggurats, large stepped pyramid-like structures, served as temples and platforms for religious ceremonies. And not only did they construct large buildings, they were also the first to develop the concept of urban planning, creating networks of canals and paved streets within their cities. They also kept records of important events, engaging in long-distance trade and establishing colonies in distant lands. All of these factors set them apart from earlier human societies and established them as the first civilization. But how did they keep records and communicate with each other? How did they keep track of time, resources, and goods? Well, the Sumerians were also credited with inventing the world's first known writing system, cuneiform. Around 3200 BC, initially used for record keeping, cuneiform consisted of wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay tablets using a reed stylus. This innovation allowed them to document economic transactions, religious rituals, legal agreements, and historical events, laying the foundation for record keeping and literature. Now, if you want to learn more about cuneiform, don't worry, we've got you covered. I actually have a whole video dedicated to the fascinating history of this ancient writing system. You can watch it right here. They weren't just great at communicating with each other, they were also great at moving stuff around. They first used it for pottery, but soon realized its potential for transportation. They developed carts and wagons, revolutionizing trade and travel. Not only were they great at moving things around, they were also great at counting things. That's right. The Sumerians are also considered to be the fathers of mathematics. They developed a basic number system, which might be why we have 60 minutes in an hour and 60 seconds in a minute. Not only were they excellent mathematicians, they were also great storytellers. They compiled myths and legends, including the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the earliest known epic stories. It tells the tale of Gilgamesh, a legendary king of Uruk, and his adventures with a wild man named Enkidu. This epic poem reflects their beliefs, values, and cultural norms, providing insights into their worldview and the human condition. What about their beliefs? Who did they worship? The Sumerians believed in many gods and goddesses, which means that they were polytheistic. Unlike monotheistic religions that believe in one god, polytheistic religions believe in many gods, each with their own powers and domains. For example, the Sumerians worshipped Enlil, the god of wind and air, Inanna, the goddess of love and beauty, and Anu, the sky god. They built massive temple structures called ziggurats to honor these deities. As mentioned earlier, ziggurats were massive, stepped pyramid-like structures made of mud brick. They served as platforms for religious ceremonies and as bases for temples or shrines dedicated to specific deities. The most famous ziggurat is the Ziggurat of Yor, a huge structure that may have been over 200 feet tall. But the Sumerians didn't just invent writing and do math. They were also the first to develop a true system of government. Now remember that the Sumerians didn't have one big empire. Instead, they had many small independent city-states, each with their own king and army. But despite this, they all shared many of the same characteristics. Each city-state was ruled by a monarch who was considered both the political and religious leader. They were assisted by a council of advisors and a bureaucracy of officials who carried out administrative tasks. The Sumerians also developed early laws to maintain order and protect citizens. These laws covered various aspects of society, including property rights, contracts, and criminal offenses. They even had a court system to enforce these laws. Not only that, but they were also one of the first to have a trade system. They established networks of trade routes connecting their city-states with other regions. Through these routes, they exchanged goods, including textiles, metalwork, and agricultural products. They also developed a standardized system of weights and measures, facilitating trade and economic activity. But what about their society? How were they divided? At the top, we had the ruling elite, which included the monarch, high-ranking officials, and wealthy merchants. Below them were the commoners, which made up the majority of the population. They were engaged in various occupations, such as farming, crafts, and trade. At the bottom was a group of enslaved people, who were considered property and were not allowed to own property or freedom. The Sumerians were truly an advanced and influential civilization. Their innovations and achievements laid the foundation for subsequent civilizations in Mesopotamia and beyond. And speaking of lasting impact, What do you think? What Sumerian invention was the most important? Was it the wheel, writing, or something else? Let us know in the comments below. The Sumerians may have been an ancient civilization, but their legacy continues to shape our world today. Their innovations and achievements serve as a reminder of the incredible progress that humanity has made over the course of history. What if Australia could turn its vast, sun-scorched desert into lush, fertile farmland? What if, with a flick of a switch, water could flow through the red heart of the continent, creating new cities and feeding millions? It sounds like science fiction, but this isn't just a fantasy. It's a collection of audacious megaprojects with a staggering potential price tag of over $200 billion. For more than a century, Australia has wrestled with a bold, controversial, and perhaps impossible dream: to flood the outback. Today, we're diving deep into this colossal vision to see if it's the nation's salvation or a multi-billion-dollar folly. To understand this grand ambition, you first need to grasp the sheer scale of Australia's dryness. Picture this. Over 70% of the entire continent is classified as arid or semi-arid land. It's one of the driest inhabited continents on Earth. While the coastal fringes enjoy life-giving rain, the vast interior, known as the outback, is locked in a constant battle with drought. Rainfall here is scarce and wildly unpredictable. This creates a paradox: a nation with immense landmass, but with its agricultural potential severely constrained by a lack of water. This harsh reality has fueled a persistent national obsession. What if we could just move the water from where it is to where it isn't? This is where the $200 billion idea comes into play. It's not one single plan, but a series of interconnected, gargantuan proposals that have been debated for generations. The core concept is simple: capture the massive volumes of water from Australia's tropical north, where monsoonal rains dump trillions of liters into the sea each year, and divert it inland. How? Through an unprecedented network of megadams, continent-spanning canals, and colossal pipelines, engineering on a scale rarely seen before. Think of it as replumbing an entire continent. The most famous of these is the Bradfield scheme, envisioned back in the 1930s, which proposed diverting Queensland's northern rivers westward to irrigate the interior. While that specific plan had its flaws, its spirit lives on in modern proposals. The goal is audacious: to create massive artificial lakes in the desert, feed irrigation channels that stretch for thousands of kilometers, and transform millions of hectares of dry earth into a thriving agricultural oasis. It would, in effect, be an attempt to terraform a part of their own country. The promises are as vast as the continent itself. If successful, such a scheme could fundamentally reshape Australia's economy and society. Proponents envision a booming agricultural sector, turning the nation into the undisputed food bowl of Asia, exporting enormous quantities of produce to a hungry world. This agricultural revolution would create tens of thousands of jobs, not just in farming but in construction, logistics, and support industries. It could trigger the development of new inland cities, relieving population pressure on the crowded coasts and revitalizing rural communities. For a country perpetually haunted by drought, achieving this level of water security would be the ultimate prize. Imagine a drought-proof Australia with green fields stretching as far as the eye can see, all powered by this incredible feat of engineering. It's a powerful and seductive vision of progress and prosperity. But for every dazzling promise, there's a sobering risk. The sheer cost, estimated at $200 billion, but likely to spiral even higher, is staggering. Critics argue that the economic benefits might never justify such a monumental investment. Is it truly the most efficient way to spend that kind of money to secure Australia's food and water future? Then there are the environmental consequences, which could be catastrophic. Diverting entire river systems would have a devastating impact on the delicate ecosystems of the tropical north, including wetlands and coastal estuaries that depend on that freshwater flow. The Great Barrier Reef, already under immense pressure, could suffer from changes in water quality and sediment delivery. Furthermore, much of the outback is not just empty land. It is home to unique wildlife and holds deep cultural and spiritual significance for Indigenous Australians, whose lands and sacred sites could be irrevocably damaged or submerged. The plan to green the desert could very well mean destroying a different but equally valuable natural world. And the biggest question of all looms over the entire concept: climate change. The models used to design these schemes are based on historical rainfall patterns. But what happens when those patterns change? Climate scientists warn that northern Australia's rainfall could become even more extreme and unpredictable, with longer droughts punctuated by more intense floods. A mega dam built for a certain flow rate might end up half empty for years, or worse, be unable to handle a record-breaking deluge. Investing hundreds of billions into a system that depends on a climate we no longer have could be the greatest gamble in the nation's history. This uncertainty has fueled intense political debate and widespread public skepticism. Is it a forward-thinking solution or a backward-looking fantasy that ignores the realities of the 21st century? Many argue that less glamorous but more sustainable solutions, like advanced water recycling, desalination, and improving irrigation efficiency, offer a safer and more reliable path forward. So, where do these grand plans stand today? Despite the endless debate, Australia's dream of flooding the outback remains largely on the drawing board. There have been smaller, partial attempts, like the Ord River scheme in Western Australia, which, despite creating a massive agricultural area, has had a complex and controversial history plagued by economic and environmental challenges. Various governments have commissioned feasibility studies and reports, but the political will and financial backing for a full-scale continent-altering project have never materialized. The debate is far from over. As Australia continues to face the challenges of a drying climate, the conversation about water, where to get it, how to use it, and what it's worth is more urgent than ever. The mega schemes are still there, simmering in the background, a tantalizing but risky option for a nation at a crossroads. In the end, Australia's dream of turning its deserts green is more than just an engineering proposal. It's a reflection of a national identity forged in a land of drought and flooding rains. It represents a bold, almost defiant belief in humanity's ability to conquer nature. But it also serves as a critical warning. The plan is visionary, but fraught with peril. It's a high-stakes bet that could secure a nation's future or become its most expensive mistake. As the world grapples with climate change and resource scarcity, the story of Australia's outback dream reveals the extraordinary lengths we might consider to survive, and the profound questions we must answer before we try to reshape the world. Is this a brilliant vision for the future or a dangerous fantasy?